generations, they are more, they're less, so there are three different things. First of all, that they're more, they see that power is not defined by your place in the pyramid, but more your lateral reach. So how well you're embedded in different networks. So to be embedded, to be part of networks, gives you more power than actually to have vertical power. Moving away from ownership towards experiences and sharing. So you identify less with owning things, but more about sharing things. And from individualism, especially important in Western societies, from individualism to actually being embedded. And that leads to actually a situation where people are more and more susceptible to buy into this third industrial revolution thinking, because that's very much lateral thinking. It's about creating networks, about exchanging freely, about not owning things but sharing things, like the sharing economy, like not owning a car but having access to transportation. That is something that the technology gives us, but that also leads to, and that's my thesis, that actually the technology drives a change in the way that we think. And Uno-san says, okay, no, we need to educate people, because basically they but he's coming from a different angle. He says, okay, well, you see change in the way people communicate. They don't have courage. They don't know how to greet each other. They don't know how to communicate with people directly around them, and we're losing traditional values. And then the question is, okay, is really something going wrong? Yes, we're losing, but basically we're in transition, and I believe that the transition is driven by the way that we experience the world. The younger generation grows up in networks. They grow up with that you derive your power by the number of followers you have on Facebook and on YouTube.
Networking means like social network.
Well, not only social networks, but it's also being part of the LinkedIn and having access to different business networks in Asia, for example, that give you power.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. So I wonder the how Japanese get what kind of the network the Japanese put our wish or put the trust on, because the other hand, as Uno-san always mentioning that the Chinese has their own network, family network,
right?
Even in overseas, then Europe, US, they have also owned their network, where the offshore information is being exchanged,
right,
shared. Then some opportunities could also be given.
Right. So what we saw.
In terms of that, the network, an offshore network, which is aside from just offshore formal business network, then what could be Japanese one, where we could trust on.
Right. So what we saw last week, when we looked at Germany, and their approach towards the third industrial revolution, what they're doing, I clearly remember that they go hand in hand. So they go through this transition process, but they really inviting companies to come on board to start their business in Germany or vice versa, and give access to this technology, because the more brain power, the more resources they can put into this process, the more Germany as a country can benefit. So this is, I think that's an attitude like, okay, this is not going to be limited to anywhere. How can we attract? How can we open ourselves up to as many networks as possible so that we can benefit from our lateral presence and actually get more power behind it? Now, this kind of thinking, even the Japanese, or of course there is this cultural identity, but do you identify yourself as being Japanese, or do you identify yourself as being a businessman who has something interesting to offer, whether I'm Japanese or Chinese or whatever? There are so many networks out there. It doesn't really matter if I'm going to develop my software in Vietnam or India. I have to adjust myself. I have to adapt. I have to be agile. But having the capacity to do business on a global scale anywhere, regardless of my position in that network, it needs presence. Getting over the idea that it's China versus Japan or Korea or whatever. It doesn't matter. It's about opportunities.
So as a group, as digital solutions and world is getting more and more in convergence. It's getting more convergent.
I think so.
Than, the less border to do some businesses.
Right.
Then this means the form of traditional human network could potentially be also the change into some of the other new form.
Right. Because and also, like, in addition to that, I mean, as Rifkin says in his presentation, he says, well, basically our biggest challenge is a global challenge. Global warming is the biggest challenge that we are facing as a human species. So that doesn't really work well with our notion and sticking to our land borders, because this is a transnational problem that needs to be dealt with on a global level. So that means that leveraging the networks and not thinking about what we do versus what they do, but reaching out and embracing that together. So yes, definitely, I think there will be less and less value by the younger generation. Less value will be put on the nation of origin, and more, okay, how can I get access to these different networks, and how can I open networks so that I can attract people to come on my network? Because the bigger the network will be, the more power you have. It's very, very clear. When I came to Japan, I had an idea how to revolutionize the shipping industry. I made a very nice piece of software, but unfortunately I was not able to attract a lot of people. A friend of mine, he created something similar for the consultancy world. His software is, well, I haven't even seen it. It doesn't really matter. But what he did different from what I did is that he immediately started to bring partners to the table. And he actually succeeded in bringing some very influential partners to the table. So the value of his network that he created is enormous. It's worth hundreds of millions of dollars, because people want in. People want to be part of that network. So the network creates the value. So it's very important. It's not the value of your product; it's how many people you can get to actually get on your network.
So how about thinking in this way? For example, the software is good things to change some lifestyle or the convenience to the end users. Then if the end user wants to be on that service, driven by that some excellent software. But on the other hand, is it sometimes likely there will be likely in some case that if even if the people wants that kind of software, but something have to be agreed between the countries, or some regulation in that country they have to be set. So just technology or software alone cannot.
Example. Can you give an
Change the
example?
wallet. Okay, like the cashless payment,
Right.
or the cryptocurrency.
Right.
So there must be have the good solution is emerging in the market, but in order to get this solution available in the market, some regulation in the market, managed by the government, managed by some regulators, and if it's coming over the border, so it's going to be the cross-border services. It's going to be like the agreement between the countries.
But it's going to be an uphill battle for those countries to actually control that. Especially if you're talking about like Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies, and things like that. I know that governments want to stay relevant, and it's probably in the best interest of us all if we can kind of somehow control this, because otherwise value will really become completely transparent and move from A to B, and it will be impossible for us to actually trace it and tax it. Which will in turn give a big redistribution problem, because if governments are no longer have access to tax revenues, then basically it will be a Wild West economy where only the strong survive, and then we will get into a very difficult situation. So yeah, I hope that you're right, and I hope that governments will stay involved, because I believe that we cannot survive without governments. At least it would very inefficient situation if we don't have governments. But
Yeah,
I'm a little bit worried.
Are you a little bit worried?
Yeah, I'm a little bit worried whether it's possible for governments to maintain their influence in, for example, things like cryptocurrency.
Yeah, if it's right, if what I'm saying is right, we living in Japan, the anti-Japanese government, who is not so strong in competing against some other countries in terms of making some influence and lobbying it to the country outside. So the what is more the help for us, like the Japanese, is just private to private.
Right.
Can go ahead.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Mm.
I think so too. Like the stronger companies, well, they're already taking initiative. Take for example Suntory, who takes destiny into their own hands and enters the American market through aggressive acquisition of Jim Beam. That's a way forward, but if they can pull it off, that's a second. But it's at least not waiting for politics and waiting for a vehicle like JICA to support you into a foreign market, but taking matters into your own hand and offering a proposal that is beneficial, not something that is basically supported by government money, but based on your own strength, that brings benefit to the local players. That's a much better proposition.
Mm. Hope so.
Yeah, I hope so too. I hope so too. It seems to be difficult, but on the other hand, what we see so far is that a lot of these JICA sponsored projects, they get twisted a little bit in the sense that they're very preferential towards the Japanese supplier, who doesn't need to adapt his solution to the local market, which means that the final result will be maybe not perceived very beneficial to the country who received it, and will not lead in follow-up business. So ultimately, it is a kind of like a hidden sponsorship of Japanese businesses without actually achieving the primary purpose, which would be creating inroads into the local economy. It's basically just a sponsored project by the people of Japan.
Yeah, it's not beneficial to the local market, neither to Japanese companies.
Right. So I really hope that Japanese companies will start and just skip the whole JICA. Oh, we're on video, but anyway, I think that would be much better if they start to their negotiations based on their own strength and not on the strength of the Japanese government support and the financial resources that they can attract in order to bring benefit. Because in the long run, that usually will not bring benefit to your organization at all. The short run, you may win a project, but you will not win the business in the long run. You will not get the network. You will not get the trust of the local people. All right. Okay. Let's continue. So we were talking about One Belt, One Road and the new kind of trade agreement, which are inclusive instead of exclusive.
Millennial generation, a vision that could move from the Americas, from Canada and the United States down to Chile. And then you have really a distributed biosphere infrastructure revolution, not a traditional geopolitical revolution. And therefore, it requires everyone to be involved because everyone's a player.
My name is Danielle. How do you see your vision and what you've been talking about affecting large food systems in industrialized countries as well as developing countries?
You know how much energy the agricultural system uses? About a third of their cost, or energy cost. The fertilizers, those are fossil fuels. The pesticides, those are fossil fuels. The machinery, it's all run by fossil fuels. The packaging, the plastics, it's made out of fossil fuels. The water that they have to bring in and irrigate, the electricity grids run by fossil fuel and nuclear power to move the water. So if you want to take a look at agriculture, it is a huge player. Not only that, the fertilizers emit nitrous oxides, which are much more potent in terms of their impact than CO2. You know that 40%, I believe it is, of the land that's used for agriculture in the world today is to grow feed for animals. It takes at least 8 pounds of feed to create 1 pound of beef. That makes the transport industry look like super efficient. It's the most inefficient system we know on the food chain. If you look at pure injustice, you'd have to say the shift to a feed grain animal culture and a chemical farming culture for pasturing animals is one of the great injustices in the history of the world. Some of us live high up on the chain. The rest are denied access to the land. We got to turn that around. So in Europe, we are interested in organic agriculture. We're interested in moving from pesticides and chemical agriculture to ecological agriculture, where we learn to live with the surrounding flora and fauna, and we find ways to encourage the flora and fauna to be able to be compatible with what we're growing. In the old chemical world, if it moves, kill it. Everything surrounding your crop should be killed. So we live in a chemical wasteland across the agricultural fields with runoff poisoning our water. It's how shameful. So we want to move to organic agriculture. We had mechanical agriculture in the first industrial revolution. It started in the late first industrial revolution. We had chemical agriculture in the second industrial revolution. We need to have smart, organic, ecological agriculture in the third industrial revolution. And we have to bring back regional and local agriculture that supports local communities. It's absurd to ship a tomato around the world. Ridiculous.
Hi, I'm Rochelle.
No.
I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about water and how water plays into this decentralized vision, how the privatization of water plays out. I was just hoping you could speak to that.
There's only a small amount of water on this planet that's available for human use, less than 1%. The rest is not available. there is a deep nexus between energy and water that's never explained. You have to have energy to move water. And that is that 8% of all the energy we generate in the world, power, goes to extracting water, treating water, moving it through pipelines in water, and recycling the waste.
8%.
But you need water to move energy. This isn't well known. And that is the energy industry uses over half of all the water we use goes to the power industries, of all industries, over half. And this will surprise you. In France, which is 80% nuclear power, you know how much of the water they use for cooling the nuclear reactors in France? Almost 50% of all the fresh water consumed in France goes to cooling the nuclear reactors. Yeah. And when the water comes back, it's heated. So it's dehydrating ecosystems that are already facing drought for their agriculture. And now, sometimes the water is so hot because of climate change in the summer, they can't even use it to cool the nuclear reactors, and they have to slow down the electricity. So what's the nexus? We have to begin to create a new plan so that people get control over their water in a distributed system that brings water together with energy. And I'll give you an example of why. If the electricity grid is disrupted, let's say one of the transformers, big electricity transformers, either through cybercrime, cyber terrorism, or natural disaster, goes down, and your power goes down, there's no water. We're dead in 3 weeks. That's how vulnerable the system. That's why we have to build in resilience by keeping it so distributed. So what do? I'm in Haute, France a couple of weeks ago. This little startup, they've taken a social housing complex, huge housing complex. They took the whole roof and turned it into a cistern. Why did they do that? Because the water falls, and as it falls, it generates electricity in a turbine. So they're using it for electricity, but now we're saying use it as a cistern. So if the power grid goes out and you can't get water, you're dead in a couple of weeks. You have the water right built in to your home, office, and factory on the roofs or nearby. You can share it in a cooperative. And then that water can be used potable for fresh water. And then we're now talking with companies about, and with housing, that you can take the water, use it for your toilet water, and you will be able to recycle it right back on site. So you can go distributed and decentralized when the real power grid goes out. The key to maintaining this system is it's distributed. If anything happens in one part of the system, you can go off, both distributed and decentralized, and share your water, share your energy. So water and energy go together, and you've just hit, and I'm glad you said this, something that has really come to the top of the agenda for us now. How do we create a distributed water internet to go side by side with the energy internet? Very cool thinking.
My name is Elizabeth, and I just have a question for underdeveloped countries. How do they play a part in this whole third industrial revolution? Can they sort of skip the gun because they don't have an established infrastructure?
Yeah, you just answered the question I was about to answer. Very good. Well, here's what we realized, just what you said. What we finally realized is in the developing world, their liability is their key asset. Their liability is they have no infrastructure. That's their asset. Because it's easier to build version infrastructure with new codes and regulations from scratch than to take an old infrastructure with old codes and regulations and transform it. So what we're learning in the developing world is this can move more quickly. We saw the opportunity that the developing world can leapfrog right past the first and second industrial revolution into the third. So the United Nations has now embraced the third industrial revolution narrative that we've just talked about tonight. The biggest problem in the developing world, no electricity. Ban Ki-moon has made this his pledge, universal electricity. We got 1 billion people that have no electricity. They're in the dark. We have 40% of the human race with infrequent, not reliable electricity. And what keeps women enslaved in this world is no electricity. And what we see with these big families in these patriarchal, brutal conditions and male-oriented cultures, no electricity. Why? Because with no electricity, women are the slaves, the children are the slaves. More children, more hands on deck that can actually carry the energy load. We forget the relationship between electricity and freeing women in the West. Women were the slaves at the hearth until electricity came in. Electricity freed women from that slavery, if you will, to go to school beyond the first 5 grades. And then electricity created new skills that didn't require upper body strength, but up here. Electricity revolution created all sorts of new skills. And when that happened, as women became more educated and more independent and had the new skills of the second industrial revolution, fewer babies. You can give out millions of condoms. It'll make no difference until you bring electricity into the developing world, free to the women, you have them get educated, and have them be recognized as half the human race. And what's interesting is the women are setting up these microgrids, a lot of them. So you see in rural Africa, they go into a village, it's happening in India too, and small startups, they come in, they lease a solar panel on each roof. They give you a lease. And then they give you a cell phone. This is happening all across rural India and now sub-Saharan Africa. But instead of a big centralized grid, then you go village to village to village and you create microgrids that are laterally scaled. This is going to take off very, very quickly. It already is. This is the smart social entrepreneurs of the next generation. This is why I'm really pleased to see this happen. It brings confidence that we can do better.
I'm Ray, and I've been thinking during your whole talk about how do we overcome monopoly?
We have to worry about a new kind of monopoly. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. I love Google. It is the magic box. I'm now so lazy that anything that comes up, especially at my age, I ask the magic box. It is a great research engine. However, when everybody needs Google, and it's the only research engine, and it's our window to the research we need, it starts to look like a global monopoly, and it starts to look like a public utility. What did we do with successful businesses that had a product line that was so important that everybody needed it and was a public good? What did we do in the second industrial revolution with the telephone industry? We, in America, in other parts of the world, we government took over a lot of it. But in America, we kept them in the private sphere, like AT&T, but we regulated them as utilities. And we did this across the electricity utilities, many of the power utilities. We regulated them. I think it's naive to believe that we won't do this. The millennials and your children, this is the new political movement. You're going to be asking the question, how do we get the best out of these new enterprises? But they have to be regulated as public goods in the realm so that we all ensure that we get equal access, that we have some control over our creative content and data, maybe through blockchains, and that we're able to secure our privacy, etc. Facebook, same thing. When the whole human family has to come together on Facebook to communicate with each other, it's a great service, but it looks like a public good. It's a utility. And we're going to have some kind of global authorities to regulate them. Does this make sense? This is the politics of your generation. This is the politics of the new third industrial revolution.
Hi, I'm Carlin. In the words of your Wharton alumni, how do we make America great again?
Let me say something to take this from another corner. President Obama wanted a green economy. He spent billions and billions of dollars of our tax money for a green economy, and we don't have a green economy. Why did this happen? Because the mentality here in this country is all we need to do is use tax money to incentivize, because we want 1 million Steve Jobs. So what happened with President Obama is he would incentivize, give some money to a solar factory here, a battery factory over there, incentivize. But you can't start with that. You have to start with incentivizing the infrastructure itself, which requires everybody coming together. Now, he made a very famous statement during his second presidential campaign, which got to the heart of it. You may recall that he was speaking to small businesses, and he made an offhanded comment saying, "You didn't build that." Remember this comment? It went viral. "You didn't build that." And they went nuts. He was referring to infrastructure, and he was trying to say the infrastructure comes first, then you can create your new businesses with it. The problem is they went viral because the small business said, "No, we create America. It's the entrepreneurial spirit." We've actually so dummied down our country that we actually have no idea how businesses feed off the infrastructure that come from public-private partnerships, government, industry, and civil society. Who do they think created the public school systems so that we could train the workforces? Private businesses didn't do that. Who laid out the interstate highways with tax money? You think private businesses will lay out an interstate highway system with no lights from coast to coast? Who underwrote all the pipelines that had to bring in the electricity, the gas and the telephone industry, on and on and on? In fact, let's look at Steve Jobs. The fact is that most of the research that went into his smartphone was government-funded research. He marketed the product. But we've so dummied down that half the country or more doesn't want the government to do anything. They don't even want the government. This is the failure of the United States. We do not have a social market economy. Europe does. Other parts of the world do. But in America, we have this whole idea that it's just the entrepreneurial spirit, let the companies rule, let the marketplace reign. This is our death knell. Because if we can't work together in each county and each state with business, civil society, academia to lay out this platform and create the regulations, codes, and standards, then the new businesses come, then the new models plug in. So what I'm saying is look to the infrastructure, and your millennial generation, it's up to you now to bring this sense of a social market economy back into the dialogue. We need government, we need business, we need the civil society, we need public capital, we need private capital, and we need social capital. All three equal players at the table. So here's what I was saying in closing. I know you get frustrated, and sometimes you think, my gosh, it's going too slow. But now's the time to redouble your efforts. We all have to really come together. We've got one generation, yours, to lay down this new consciousness, this biosphere consciousness. Your responsibility to carry this on is a weight that no generation's had in history. I don't know of any period in history where one generation was called upon to save the species. And if you believe this is really happening, and it is, this is actually the responsibility of the millennials in this room. We now have, I think, potentially a roadmap and a compass. It's going to be up to the younger generations now. This is the digital revolution. You are the digital revolution. It's your turn. It seems to me if the millennial generation is ready to create this new digitally connected world that helps us create peace between the economy of society and the biosphere of the planet, it should be now. And what you have to do is you have to join together in the virtual world, in the physical world, on the ground, in the communities, both in the infrastructure, in the politics, and the social engagement. You got to make this happen. I'll give you one little mission. How long is it going to take for a millennial generation to prepare a bill of particulars for a declaration of human responsibilities and stewardship of our human race, our fellow creatures on the planet we live in? And then you have 1 billion young people in a cohort in Facebook, and they're all declaring this. Then you're at the table. You're at the table virtually and physically. And then 1 billion people strong, you should be able to do this in a very short period of time. This doesn't take a lot of organizing. Then you're at the table with the new potential monopolies. You're at the table with the governments who would purloin this for their own ends. You're at the table with the special interests that want to drag us back to the second industrial revolution. Come to the table. Make it happen. Pass on this legacy so when your grandchildren look back at you, they can say you did the right thing. You helped replenish the planet. Got us off carbon. Help show our proper respect to generations not yet here, including our fellow creatures. Thank you. Good night.
Oh, Edison, I have a question about the water issue.
Right.
For example, Turco is Tigris-Euphrates rivers upstream.
Right.
And Syria is lower stream.
Right.
Turkey, you would like to use water resource themselves, and therefore Syria could not use Tigris-Euphrates water resource. Could not use water resources.
Right.
How to solve the multi-countries water issues? Smart grid and Industry 4 could not solve these issues.
Well, that's a very good
Yeah.
question.
Same issues. I think same issues. There is the same issue in the Europe.
There is same issues in Europe. There are same issues in Pakistan. I remember Pakistan. Pakistan has the same issues. It's happening everywhere.
Yeah.
I even believe there's an issue like that in between the United States and Mexico.
Oh, I remember.
Yeah. So there, this transnational problem
Yeah.
is a big problem because basically we want to get the energy resources. We want to
Yeah.
keep that in our own country,
How to solve
and we
the
put all we put all the nuclear power stations at our borders, so
Yeah.
that the half of the damage will fall upon our neighbors. How to solve that? As an economist, okay, of course, one thing is with legislation. It happened in for example, we had the problem in Europe, like you said, Rhine River. Upstream, BASF was dumping all kinds of
Many countries.
yes, waste, and it was polluting the Rhine River in the Netherlands.
Yeah.
So we got like a lot of waste. Upstream, they were kind of like narrowing the Rhine so that the water would easily flow out of
Yes.
Germany,
Yes.
but we actually led to flooding in the Netherlands. So this is a difficult issue. I think actually this may have what the problem that you're describing. The Euphrates River actually was cited as one of the reasons why the whole civil war started to begin with. Because actually a lot of farmers were very poor.
Yeah.
Because of drought, because the land was getting too poor, and it was not on the agenda of the president to protect the farmers. But the poverty was actually the one that drove the revolt against Assad, not anything else. So this gives this underlines its significance. How to solve it? I think you can only solve it if there is a common interest.
Even if China, Yellow River, upstream to Yellow River use many water resources, and lower area.
Exactly. For energy.
Yeah.
So, for example, how to they need a dam. They need more electricity. They just build a dam, but there's the whole a whole farm population is just extinguished because there's the water will be taken out and repurposed for energy generation. That's it. It happens in China. It happens, but the small farmers don't have any political weight. So it's up to the policymakers to decide there. And
A rich country could make water from the sea to change to the fresh water.
Right.
But a poor country could not make that
No.
solution.
Oh, but it's becoming more and more feasible to actually do that, to make fresh water out of, and very cost-effective solutions are now becoming available. So that is hopeful, but yeah, the problem you're describing is real, and I don't really have the solutions other than basically assigning economic value to. But you need some kind of like political weight behind it. So you can say, well, there is I have the right to generate electricity from the water that flows into my country. On the other hand, you can say downstream there is the right to have water for agriculture.
Yeah.
So basically, what you can do is you can create some kind of tradable ownership rights. So the right for agriculture versus the right for energy generation, and then create a tradable system that will actually generate the most benefit for both. That means that if there is more benefit to generate electricity, that will lead people to buy more water rights from the people downstream, and by that actually compensate the farmers for losing their money. That means still that all the water will remain in Turkey, but at least there is some kind of compensation system. The thing with our economic system is that usually the externalities, the external effects of things are hidden. It's just like putting up a factory and blowing up polluted air. If a factory doesn't have to pay for it, it remains invisible. It is a cost to many, but it's not put in the books of that company. Therefore, it doesn't exist, basically. That's what drove our economy, because in our system we forgot to include external effects. It's not visible, therefore it happened a lot. Big companies were polluting everywhere. It didn't cost them anything. They could still write the profits into their own books, but they actually put a lot of cost into the people that live around them. So if you can somehow visualize and materialize these externalities, for example, in a tradable emission right scheme, there is a solution. But you need to have kind of like also an economic and also political weight, because how does Syria enforce their economic rights to Turkey?
Yeah.
Turkey says, well, what the fuck, it's just, I don't care.
If IoT agriculture could save the less water, it is a kind of the solution.
Right. So, but what would...
Maybe IoT agriculture use less water.
But is that IoT, or is that based on bringing more energy of water efficiency into the greenhouses, for example? Yeah, I'm not really sure how that would work in how we would generate more water efficiency in IoT. How do you see that?
I hear IoT agriculture use less 農薬. Therefore, I think IoT agriculture could use less water. That is a solution of the water resources.
Okay, so the only way that I could foresee this is that, for example, that you basically now you just put a watering scheme, right, to water plants in your greenhouse. So based on that scheme, you put in 10,000 liters of water every day into your greenhouse. And instead of doing that, you're actually going to monitor the dryness of the soil and the salinity and all these things. You're going to observe that, and you're only going to put water in places where it's needed. So instead of putting 10,000 liters every day, maybe you can suffice by putting 6,000 liters in the places that need it, and no water where you don't need it. So basically, you can be more efficient with water. But Japan really doesn't have so much of a water problem, does it?
I think water problem is very difficult to solve.
Yeah.
Especially like in Asia and China, going down to the Vietnam, to the ocean, and China prepared dam. Flooding over to the river, the downward is over flooded, but they cannot control.
Yeah.
Also, they don't open the gate, and they just irrigation, as you said, is called problem.
Right.
But they can control whatever they can do that. China up to China. So the currently like Myanmar accepted the creation dam of upwhere of the territory of Myanmar. That they asked them to stop to build it because they if China control the dam, it's called water problem. So the water problem is very difficult to solve, especially for river. No two answers. This is history. Just all the way down the history. Problem. By the way, what does mean woman is slave? I don't understand what's mean.
Okay, woman is slave. Basically, in the pre-electrical era, women were basically relying on their physical labor to cook, to clean.
Yeah.
There was no vacuum cleaner. There was no electrical cooking. They had to cut wood, bring wood to the kitchen, ignite the oven, and everything was done manually. So you depend on women to actually grow the crops, to harvest, to get wood, to cook the food. Basically, carrying to the domestic chores was.
Oh, this meaning he said slave?
Yeah.
That's the reason I don't understand. What hell is he talking about slave? It's a more easy job, you know.
Well, I don't know about that. I don't know whether it's more easy. It's very hard labor.
Washing and cooking is
Washing.
not work.
Well, if you have a washing machine, yeah, then
If
it's
you
not.
don't have washing machine, but no problem at all. But why she's talking about woman is slave? No kidding.
Because women did not have access to education. The only thing that they would do is hard physical labor day to day to actually take after the household. That's hard work. Actually, I think women in developing countries work much harder than men do.
Okay, but anyway, I understand what you mean. And the last question, she said, what he said for the how to attain Great America. What is his answer?
How to make America great again.
I don't understand.
Shit.
Well, repeat again.
Repeat again.
I don't understand. He is a little bit biased for women. I understand. Okay.
No, actually, I know how to make America great again. I remember. Okay, so Obama tried to introduce green technology.
Yeah.
To incentivize program, but that was not successful. He spent billions of dollars, and actually it didn't lead to green technology being because he was looking for Steve Jobs, unique entrepreneurs who would bring green technology to the United States. It didn't work. What is necessary is that basically we are not going to look for a Steve Jobs. What he said, basically, Obama saw the light later on his presidential term when he said, okay, you didn't make this. Remember that when he said that you didn't make this? What he meant is that the government has a certain task. Their task is to create the infrastructure. They create the educational system, the typical public services. America is now all about give the private sector their way. Everything needs to be solved through the private sector. The public sector should be as small as possible. We don't want to pay any taxes. We don't want to do anything. Everything can be arranged through the private sector. But that's not right. That's not the right approach. The right approach, make America great again, is to actually combine the public sector with the semi-public sector with the private sector. And actually, and if you have all these people at the table, you can make a change. So make America great again is make sure that everybody has a seat at the table.
I don't understand what this means.
What it means is that basically what America needs to do is that they need to stop focusing on wanting to solve everything through the private sector. Because there is a very important role for the public sector. The public sector needs to take care of the infrastructure, bringing public services back into the hands of, bringing public services and creating global infrastructure. They have been doing that when they created the roads, when they created the electricity grid, when they, that was all.
It means the public sector cannot create infrastructure, right?
The public sector, no, they can.
Can.
Why?
Why?
That's basically what the public sector is very good at. The private sector is not going to do that.
But currently, America, for example, highway,
Right.
they have nothing improvement for past half century.
Yeah, but how did the highway system get there? The interstate highway was all. They were all publicly funded projects to develop the infrastructure. There is no private company that's going to do that.
So government need to allow them to make it?
Government needs to actually take control and actually be the driver behind the development of that.
Right. So
public sector.
Public sector.
Public sector.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So public sector should do that.
Yes, exactly.
And Obama said so?
Obama didn't do that. And Trump is actually not doing that at all. He's actually reducing the influence of the public sector. He says we need to get the public sector back into the game because they perform a very important
this
role.
is the right answer, right?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Oh, I understand. Okay.
Right.
Okay, this video is finished, right?
Right, the video is finished.
Oh.
At last.
Oh.
1 hour and 45 minutes.
Oh, great job.
It's a long one, but I thought it was a very, very good one. I really admire the way that the guy speaks. And
Yeah, very good one, except woman. Woman
you were such a man.
feminist.
Yeah, feminist and animal rights activist and green energy supporter and yeah, all the people you love.
Yeah, okay. So we have 10 minutes. So what
Right.
you want to do?
Okay.
So we're going to start some blockchain today.
One of the drivers, yeah, blockchain. I wanted to talk about the connectivity that ties these things together, and blockchain. I think will be a very important technology that will actually create transparency and that will be the underlying infrastructure behind the Internet of Things. Therefore, I wanted to have a look at blockchain, and maybe this is a good time to start.
This is short one?
Yes, 5 minutes.
Oh.
Okay.
Oh, 6, sorry.
It's final exams week, and that means two things. The library is packed, and I'll be writing papers.
Blockchains are incredibly popular nowadays. But what is a blockchain? How do they work? What problems do they solve? And how can they be used? Like the name indicates, a blockchain is a chain of blocks that contains information. This technique was originally described in 1991 by a group of researchers and was originally intended to timestamp digital documents so that it's not possible to backdate them or to tamper with them, almost like a notary. However, it went by mostly unused until it was adapted by Satoshi Nakamoto in 2009 to create the digital cryptocurrency Bitcoin. Now, a blockchain is a distributed ledger that is completely open to anyone. They have an interesting property. Once some data has been recorded inside a blockchain, it becomes very difficult to change it. So how does that work? Well, let's take a closer look at a block. Each block contains some data, the hash of the block, and the hash of the previous block. The data that is stored inside a block depends on the type of blockchain. The Bitcoin blockchain, for example, stores the details about a transaction in here, such as the sender, receiver, and the amount of coins. A block also has a hash. You can compare a hash to a fingerprint. It identifies a block and all of its contents, and it's always unique, just as a fingerprint. Once a block is created, its hash is being calculated. Changing something inside the block will cause the hash to change. So in other words, hashes are very useful when you want to detect changes to blocks. If the fingerprint of a block changes, it no longer is the same block. The third element inside each block is the hash of the previous block. And this effectively creates a chain of blocks, and it's this technique that makes a blockchain so secure. Let's take an example. Here we have a chain of 3 blocks. As you can see, each block has a hash and the hash of the previous block. So block number 3 points to block number 2, and number 2 points to number 1. Now the first block is a bit special. It cannot point to previous blocks because, well, it's the first one. We call this block the Genesis block. Now let's say that you tamper with the second block. this causes the hash of the block to change as well. In turn, that will make block 3 and all following blocks invalid because they no longer store a valid hash of the previous block. So changing a single block will make all following blocks invalid. But using hashes is not enough to prevent tampering. Computers these days are very fast and can calculate hundreds of thousands of hashes per second. You could effectively tamper with a block and recalculate all the hashes of other blocks to make your blockchain valid again. So to mitigate this, blockchains have something that is called proof of work. It's a mechanism that slows down the creation of new blocks. In Bitcoin's case, it takes about 10 minutes to calculate the required proof of work and add a new block to the chain. This mechanism makes it very hard to tamper with the blocks, because if you tamper with one block, you'll need to recalculate the proof of work for all the following blocks. So the security of a blockchain comes from its creative use of hashing and the proof of work mechanism. But there is one more way that blockchains secure themselves, and that is by being distributed. Instead of using a central entity to manage the chain, blockchains use a peer-to-peer network and everyone is allowed to join. When someone joins this network, he gets a full copy of the blockchain. The node can use this to verify that everything is still in order. Now, let's see what happens when someone creates a new block. That block is sent to everyone on the network. Each node then verifies the block to make sure that it hasn't been tampered with. And if everything checks out, each node adds this block to their own blockchain. All the nodes in this network create consensus. They agree about what blocks are valid and which aren't. Blocks that are tampered with will be rejected by other nodes in the network. So, to successfully tamper with a blockchain, you'll need to tamper with all the blocks on the chain, redo the proof of work for each block, and take control of more than 50% of the peer-to-peer network. Only then will your tampered block become accepted by everyone else, so this is almost impossible to do. Blockchains are also constantly evolving. One of the most recent developments is the creation of smart contracts. These contracts are simple programs that are stored on the blockchain and can be used to automatically exchange coins based on certain conditions. More on smart contracts in a later video. The creation of blockchain technology piqued a lot of people's interest. Soon others realized that this technology could be used for other things, like storing medical records, creating a digital notary, or even collecting taxes. So now you know what a blockchain is, how it works on a basic level, and what problems it solves. Want to learn how you can implement a simple blockchain in JavaScript? Then check out this video here. And as always, thank you very much for watching.
So the thing is, basically, you create a distributed system without a central authority. There are all kinds of securities built into this system to make sure that you cannot change the content of it later. So starting with the e-notary system, basically you want to create a unique transaction that will not be tampered with. So you have traceability. If you buy a house, you want to record that and not tamper with it later, because maybe later on there is an interest of the owner to hide the fact that there has been a fire in that building previous to his ownership. So that's where it comes from, not what people having to tamper with that data. So that blockchain will make it sure that actually the transactions in the system become transparent and they cannot be changed. That creates traceability, and that creates a lot of opportunities. That creates opportunities, like they said, for the e-notary. It also creates opportunities for supply chain. And what I would like to focus on so these are examples of the things that you can do with with blockchain and what's happening.
What does mean 6 people coming on the video?
That's a distributed system. So basically, everybody keeps a record, and the way that they're also checking is that everybody needs to be in agreement about the blocks. So they can see if somebody's trying to tamper with it, and if it doesn't add up, then the majority decides. So it's almost impossible to tamper with it. Normally, if you have one central authority. If you have one central authority and it would come under attack, and you could change everything, and because it's only one central authority, there are no checks and balances. If hackers would get in on that single node, then they are there. But what does a hacker do if actually there are hundreds of authorities? So basically, you cannot attack hundreds of authorities at the same time. So that makes it almost invulnerable to hacker attacks. Because basically, all these nodes will then discuss together, okay, are we in agreement about this transaction? Yes. And if they are not in agreement, then the majority will decide.
Okay.
So blockchain, so what? Oh, this is 10 minutes. Is that okay?
The blockchain is one of the most promising new technologies for the future. So what is it? It's a distributed ledger technology that underlies cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin and provides a way to record and transfer data that is transparent, safe, auditable, and resistant to outages. The blockchain has the ability to make the organizations that use it transparent, democratic, decentralized, efficient, and secure. The blockchain is likely to disrupt many industries in the coming 5 to 10 years. These are some of the industries it's already disrupting.
Number 1, banking and payments. Some people say that the blockchain will do to banking what the internet did to media. Blockchain technology can be used to give access to financial services to billions of people around the world, including those in third world countries who don't have access to traditional banking. Technologies like Bitcoin allow anyone to send money across borders almost instantly and with very low fees. Abra is a startup that is working on Bitcoin-based remittance services. And many banks like Barclays are also working on adopting blockchain technology to make their business operations faster, more efficient, and secure. Banks are also increasingly investing in blockchain projects and startups. IBM predicts that about 15% of banks will be using the blockchain by the end of 2017.
So actually, Takashi-san was already talking about this, I believe, in India, where these peer-to-peer payments are being made without people actually having access to a bank, and people make them from phone to phone. That actually blockchain will allows even more advanced way to exchange money without the interference of banks.
Number 2, cybersecurity. Although the blockchain ledger is public, the data is verified and encrypted using advanced cryptography. This way, the data is less prone to being hacked or changed without authorization. The blockchain eliminates the need for middlemen, making it more efficient than many legacy systems in cybersecurity.
Number 3, supply chain management. With blockchain technology, transactions can be documented in a permanent decentralized record and monitored securely and transparently. This can greatly reduce time delays and human mistakes. It can also be used to monitor costs, labor, and even waste and emissions at every point in the supply chain. This has serious implications for understanding and controlling the real environmental impact of products. The blockchain can also be used to verify the authenticity or fair trade status of products by tracking them from their origin. Some blockchain startups working in this sector are Provenance, Fluent, SkuChain, and BlockVerify.
So basically, where do our products come from? Who supplied it? I mean, what we get in the supermarket, was it really produced on an environmentally friendly way? Was it really produced not using child labor? Was it really produced making these things transparent by using blockchain technology is possible? I have another video on how that works. Another example on how that works. So I think that is has a very high potential in actually creating more transparency, corporate responsibility, and giving more makes it possible for people to look down the supply chain and actually make better choices when.
It means the data are not violated.
Exactly, not being tampered with, not being hidden. It's accessible to everyone who cares to look.
Number 4. Forecasting. Blockchain is set to change the entire approach to research, consulting, analysis, and forecasting. Online platforms like Augur are looking to create global decentralized prediction markets. These technologies can be used to place and monitor bets on anything from sports to stocks to elections in a decentralized way.
Number 5. Networking and Internet of Things. Samsung and IBM are using blockchain technology for a new concept called Adept, which will create a decentralized network of IoT devices. Operating like a public ledger for a large number of devices, it would eliminate the need for a central location to handle communications between them. The devices would be able to communicate to each other directly to update software, manage bugs, and monitor energy usage.
Number 6. Insurance. The global insurance market is based on trust management. Blockchain is a new way of managing trust and can be used to verify many types of data in insurance contracts, like the insured person's identity. So-called oracles can be used to integrate real-world data with blockchain smart contracts. This technology is very useful for any types of insurance that relies on real-world data, for example, crop insurance. Eternity is one blockchain project that is building tools that are useful in the insurance industry.
Number 7.
That is also like working with big data and having access and making crossovers between huge data sets and actually applying those to insurance contracts. That must be a very big job.
Private transport and ride sharing. The blockchain can be used to create decentralized versions of peer-to-peer ride-sharing apps, allowing both car owners and users to arrange terms and conditions in a secure way without third-party providers. Startups working in this area include Arcade City and Lazuz. The use of built-in e-wallets can allow for car owners to automatically pay for parking, highway tolls, and electricity top-ups to the vehicle. UBS, ZF, and Innogy are some of the startups developing blockchain-based e-wallets.
Number 8. Cloud storage. Data on a centralized server is inherently vulnerable to hacking, data loss, or human error. Using blockchain technology allows cloud storage to be more secure and robust against attacks. Storage is one example of a cloud storage network using blockchain technology.
Number 9. Charity. Common complaints in the charity space include inefficiency and corruption, which prevent money from reaching those who are meant to have it. Using blockchain technology to track donations can let you be sure that your money is going to end up in the right hands. Bitcoin-based charities like BitGive Foundation use blockchain's secure and transparent distributed ledger to let donors see that the intended party has received the funds.
Number 10. Voting. Probably one of the most important areas of society that blockchain will disrupt is voting. The 2016 US election is not the first time certain parties were accused of rigging election results. Blockchain technology can be used for voter registration and identity verification, and electronic vote counting to ensure that only legitimate votes are counted and no votes are changed or removed. Creating an immutable, publicly viewable ledger of recorded votes would be a massive step forward in making elections more fair and democratic. Democracy Earth and Follow My Vote are two startups aiming to disrupt democracy itself through creating blockchain-based online voting systems for governments.
Number 11. Government. Government systems are often slow and opaque and prone to corruption. Implementing blockchain-based systems can significantly reduce bureaucracy and increase security, efficiency, and transparency of government operations. Dubai, for example, is aiming to put its government documents on the blockchain by 2020.
Number 12. Public benefits. The public benefits system is another sector that suffers from slowness and bureaucracy. Blockchain technology can help assess, verify, and distribute welfare or unemployment benefits in a much more streamlined and secure way. GovCoin is a UK-based company that is helping the government to distribute public benefits using blockchain technology. The blockchain is also a good contender for implementing a basic income. Circles is a project working on developing a blockchain-based technology for implementing a universal basic income.
Number 13. Healthcare. Another industry that relies on so many legacy systems and is ripe for disruption is healthcare. One of the challenges hospitals face is the lack of a secure platform to store and share data. They're also often victims of hacking because of outdated infrastructure. Blockchain technology can allow hospitals to safely store data like medical records and share it with the authorized professionals or patients. This will improve data security and can even help improve accuracy and speed of diagnosis. Gem and Tyrion are two startups that are working on disrupting the current healthcare data space.
Number 14. Energy management. Energy management has been a highly centralized industry for a long time. Energy producers and users cannot buy it directly from each other and have to go through the public grid or trusted private intermediary. Transactive Grid is a startup using the Ethereum blockchain that allows customers to buy and sell energy directly from each other in a peer-to-peer way.
Number 15. Online music. Several blockchain startups are coming up with ways for musicians to get paid directly from their fans without giving up large percentages of sales to platforms or record companies. Smart contracts can also be used to automatically solve licensing issues and better catalog songs with their respective creators. Mycelia and Ujo Music are two startups creating blockchain-based solutions in the music industry.
Number 16. Retail. When you shop, you trust the retail system of the store or the marketplace. Decentralized blockchain-based retail utilities work differently. They connect buyers and sellers without a middleman and associated fees. Sorry, Amazon. In these cases, trust comes from smart contract systems, the security of exchanges, and built-in reputation management systems. Two startups disrupting the retail space are OpenBazaar and OB1.
Number 17. Real estate. Some of the issues in buying and selling real estate are bureaucracy, lack of transparency, fraud, and mistakes in public records. Using blockchain technology can speed up transactions by reducing the need for paper-based record keeping. It can also help with tracking, verifying ownership, ensuring accuracy of documents, and transferring property deeds. Ubiquity is a blockchain-secured platform for real estate record keeping that is an alternative for legacy paper-based systems.
Number 18. Crowdfunding. Crowdfunding has become a popular method of fundraising for new startups and projects in recent years. Crowdfunding platforms exist to create trust between project creators and supporters, but they also charge high fees. In blockchain-based crowdfunding, trust is created through smart contracts and online reputation systems, which removes the need for a middleman. New projects can raise funds by releasing their own tokens that represent value and can later be exchanged for products, services, or cash. Many blockchain projects have now raised millions of dollars through such token sales. Although it's still early days and the regulatory future of blockchain-based crowdfunding is uncertain, it's an area that holds a lot of promise.
Number 19. Your industry. If your industry deals with data or transactions of any kind, it's likely a field that can be disrupted by blockchain technology. The space is wide open and the opportunities are many.
Did we miss anything? What are some other industries the blockchain is disrupting? Leave your comments below.
Agriculture.
Interesting. Okay.
So there is this creates transparency, creates the possibility to take away the middleman and build trust in a peer-to-peer way. So without having to rely on third-party authentication.
So he said middleman, but like a pharmaceutical industry, they are going to sell to the wholesalers, going to retailer, right? But they don't need wholesaler.
Well, no. Basically, regarding the pharmaceutical industry, what they were talking about is patient data.
No, my question is, it's just retail businesses, they always going to passing through wholesalers.
Right.
And like in Japan, it's three big wholesalers managing.
Right.
Pharmaceutical company, big wholesalers, and retailers.
Right.
But still, wholesalers.
What is their added value?
Because they can redistribute their product to each retailer. They can select retailers, and also they try to control the distribution of product.
So,
like for example, pharmaceutical company, they cannot distribute retailers for thousand retailers. because wholesalers get combined all pharmaceutical company,
Right.
100 of those, then combined all those and distribute to retailer.
Right.
So I think this kind of function was still going to be needed, right?
Yes. Like for
Okay.
logistical efficiency.
Okay, I understand. Because this is, he said, the middleman. But this is so kind of middleman is needed, right?
Right. So
Okay.
logistical efficiency will not be taken away.
Okay.
Elements of
So next week I'm going to do this blockchain.
Yes, going to further look to blockchain, and I actually want to look at fair trade.
Fair trade.
Yes.
Fair trade based on the blockchain.
Yes.
Oh.
Okay, so today is finished, right?
Yes.
Finish?
Yes.
Okay.
Finish.
Okay, thank you.
Finish. Takahashi finish.
Thank you.
That's it.